Hey everybody. I would normally write about this sort of thing, but I just wanted to make a video to be really clear about I'm not trying to be pretentious or tell people what the game I made means or what you're supposed to think about it. But I did want to just throw out kind of what I thought it was like to make a game. And yeah, it's interactive fiction, so people can argue about whether it's a game or not also anyway. But yeah, Ludum Dare. Ludum Dare? Stupid Latin. Basically, the idea is that you make a game in 2 days, 48 hours, and you have to do it on a theme. The theme this time around was 10 seconds. I knew beforehand that I wanted to make a text adventure game because A, you don't need art, and B, I just like them a lot. So when I saw the theme of 10 seconds, I kind of said, oh crap, because there's no way to natively keep track of that inside of Inform, which is what I used. So I learned a lot about Inform along the way because of that, and also because I really didn't know it that well when I started. I know it a lot better now. Um, but yeah, mostly for keeping track of time, I used an extension made by a community member who should be credited when you start the game. Um, Unfortunately, it wasn't really that in tune with what I needed it to do, so I may as well have just written the thing myself, but that's not to say that the extension isn't good. This is the part where I say if you haven't played the game, you should probably go do that. And I'll put the solutions for the good and the bad, well, the okay and the other okay, probably better ending down in the description. Uh, so yeah, go do it. It'll take like 5 minutes. You can cheat. That way you won't just have to take my word for it, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, words. Apart, it's the game. So I knew right off of the bat that I wanted to do something where the player is dropped someplace without any real context, because I think that's something that games do that not really any other medium does. I mean, books do sometimes, movies do sometimes too, but it feels a lot more special when you can look around and figure it out for yourself, like actually in a sense that has agency what's going on. That's something that text adventure games do really well because usually there's no narrator, there's no voice telling you what's going on. It's just you doing stuff and then seeing what happens. Um, so I knew that right off the bat. I thought, okay, 10 seconds. Like, what needs to happen in 10 seconds? You could save somebody. That would be, that would make sense because something's happening to them. You have to help them before time runs out. So yeah, a character without context. That's basically the deal. Um, you're in a house. Obviously, you don't know if it's yours. You don't know who you are. You don't even know if you are really a character, which I think is kind of cool, I guess. You don't know if you're someone specific or if you're just a projection of the player. And so every 10 seconds or every 10 actions that are valid, I guess, you get this message you have a feeling something bad happened. And so that was a little bit patronizing, I guess, in retrospect. But I didn't want to say, uh, your daughter died or even someone died, because I wanted the player to kind of figure out on their own that that's what happened. And it felt like it would be probably less annoying, but it would feel less punchy if you were just allowed to go over 10 seconds and then walk into a room and be like, oh, someone died. Oh. And of course, it was kind of weird to, if you do kick the door down or if you use the key to get the okay ending, um, you, it just says that you go in there and you see this person on the ground. That's kind of weird too, I guess. But to me, when I was writing it, it made sense because it's your daughter. You don't think of it as there is a 7-year-old kid laying on the ground who is your progeny. That'd be weird too. So yeah, those are just some random thoughts, I guess, about that. But really, the overriding theme I was going for was just that lack of context. I tried to put breadcrumbs for context as far as there's photography awards in your room, there's crayons and markers and little girl stuff in your daughter's room, but I didn't really want to beat it into the player's head too much, and I only had 2 days, and the amount of rooms that I made were about the amount that I could possibly make, considering how much I knew about Inform and how quickly I could make stuff. So you're in this situation where, you know, either you figure out that you need to save somebody or just that there's something that you have to do. And to me, that's really what the game is more about, is every time you start over, you have more of a clue about what's going on. Maybe you found some memories that you can trigger now. And every time you start over, you have more insight into what's happening. Because I'm obnoxious, to me, that was really what the game was about. The player identity changing after you've played 10 times as opposed to at the beginning of the game. Context is like, you know, the more you know about your situation as a character, the more the game changes. And having a goal versus not having a goal obviously makes a big difference. So that's why I didn't really want to say, you know, your daughter died, 10 seconds, you suck. It's not really about, you know, being able to solve it right away. It's about the experience of, like, being in someone's shoes and figuring out what that's about. And then there are the memories. There are these flashbacks that you get to being in Japan, and as you play, you realize that she's had this, because you're a woman. You know, I feel like that was kind of a gotcha moment, the way that I depicted it. But that's really not what I was trying to do. It was really the way that made the most sense, putting it in the ending. Obviously, there are a lot of things that I could have done different, but I felt like I painted myself into a corner where the only way to say that you're a woman, that's who you're playing as, would be if you, like, examine self and it's like, you look down, you see boobs. And I felt like by the time that I had a real idea of who you were, there wasn't enough time to go back and change stuff, so that was just how it happened. So, if it felt like I was trying to make it a surprise, whoops, I guess. My bad. So yeah, as you play, you realize that, you know, kind of the experience of being in Japan is something that's obviously stuck with you. Really, to me, your character's experiences in Japan is still about exploring the idea of context. And that there are these towns in the exclusion zone where, like Okuma or Tomioka, where everything looks fine. You know, it looks like anyone should be able to live there, but there's nobody there. So it's really bizarre to see this town that looks like it's completely intact and nobody lives there at all. There's a couple of ways, I guess, that I felt like that connected with the overall story of, or experience of being dropped into someone's shoes and not knowing what's going on. Is A, people lend cities a certain kind of context. And without them, they become a very different, weird place. And B, that you don't really know the context of the memories either. You're just kind of dropped into them, and depending on how much you know about Japan, maybe it's really quickly clear where you are, or maybe it isn't. And I kind of hoped that by being put in this weird context and then realizing where you are, that maybe the player would get a different perspective on what the Fukushima disaster was like. It wasn't just something that happened to a whole country of people. It was something that happened to people in a very personal, very deep way that isn't just tragedy. It's something that they deal with every day. Their house is out there that maybe they've lived in for decades, and they can't move back in. Even though, you know, the house looks fine, the air and ground around them would, you know, basically give them medical problems. And something about that is really poetic and kind of sad to me. I don't know if I portrayed it that way, but I hope one person thinks that. Or maybe me talking about it on here makes people think about it differently. So yeah. In that way, I always kind of thought about the game about being in the shoes of somebody else and learning what that's about. Even when you're immediately put in that position, you don't really know anything at all. It's not by coincidence that what I think of as the better ending in the game is one where the main character has no idea what's really happened in the house. It's just you kind of going around and having these memories, the feelings that you have about those experiences. It like breaks this curse or whatever. That part doesn't really matter. That's kind of open-ended on purpose. The important thing is that at the end of the game, the main character doesn't know what's happened. Obviously, from a gameplay perspective, it's me trying to reward you for having found all the memories and figured out what to do to beat them in a very cliche adventure game sort of way. But from a story perspective, I guess I was trying to make a statement about, it's important to have empathy for people as individuals and not just as just a mass of people who are affected by disaster, which is something that's really hard to do, and it's really hard to even kind of explain. Maybe I didn't do a very good job, but I still think it's really important. So yeah, even if nobody else likes it, which is totally fine, to me it's an interesting idea. Lessons. Well, the first one is that text adventure games are a pain to make because you have absolutely no way of predicting what people will do, which I probably should have known as somebody who's DM'd Dungeons and Dragons a lot, because that never goes the way you think it would. You can't anticipate how people will play it, and you can't tell them how to play it, because that would be rude. And I do that a little bit in this game, and mostly it was just because I didn't have enough time to let people to build in interactions that would let people be more free about interacting with stuff. And I tried to kind of pitch it so that everything in the game is in there for a reason, as far as like scenery, trying to say something about the people who live in this house. I think when I started writing all of it, I had the idea that the house is in coastal Maine. It doesn't really matter, but that's where it is, I guess. Also, the character's name is Karen. Not that that matters, but I mean, you gotta color something in the source code, so... So yeah, hopefully that didn't sound like I was trying to be too deep or whatever. Because most of it, I just kind of wrote like flash fiction and probably not very well. But, you know, I only had 2 days to do it, so I don't really feel bad, which is cool. And it's a really frenetic, crazy way to learn how to do something. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope that made sense. And I hope you like the game. So yeah. Bye.